All right, so I'm going to talk about what it is to be a state national. Has anybody ever heard of that before?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
All right, I know it's not foreign. I know we've had somebody talk about this in the last year and a half or whatever. Well, foreign, that actually is we'll talk about what it is to be foreign. So what we're going to basically break down right now is like what it is to be legal versus lawful. So legal is like kind of like the matrix nonsense rules and whatnot that are kind of ridiculous versus lawful, which is more on the common law side of things. So first of all, too, like sometimes people would portray like what we're about to discuss as being a sovereign citizen. I'm sure people have heard that term. Does anybody understand how that like basically is ridiculous to say you're a sovereign citizen?
Yeah.
All right, so like a sovereign is like a king, but a citizen is someone who has jurisdiction or dominion over them. So to say that is like ridiculous. So it makes no sense at all. So yeah, I like my notes are totally ridiculous. So I'm gonna be like squinting and staring at this piece of paper a little bit. I didn't get to write them in large font. This was like from the drive over here. So yeah, so to be a sovereign is to be a non-resident alien. And non-resident alien is also another version of a state national. So if you are a resident alien of like what this construct is, basically you're in a U.S. citizen, and the construct that we are like being subjected to involuntarily without our knowledge is the District of Columbia. And then also the Puerto Rico is another one of these things. So we're going to talk about what jurisdiction is and how like we're being subjects in like a kingdom of nonsense, more or less, would be one of the ways I would put it. So yeah, we've got the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments, which some may know about. Were pretty much slavery was supposed to have ended, but really like slavery never ended. What they did is they just did a pivot. So they said that everybody's technically a slave, and they created the term of a U.S. citizen in the legal construct of nonsense that we all don't want to be a part of. And then so really like what this is all going to be about is that like if you know what you're talking about, then you're not subject to this. But it really takes a lot of due diligence and work. So like what I'm giving you is just the tip of the iceberg. And like you really need to explore the whole iceberg to understand not being floating in like what's called maritime admiralty law, which is actually kind of a cool way of putting this. So yeah. So the 14th Amendment, more or less, whether Lincoln was aware of it or not, and the 13th and 15th, it basically like created this. It was kind of a way of saying like that people are free, even though like if you read the fine print that everybody's being enslaved. 13th Amendment, for example, says that slavery is illegal. It says involuntary servitude is actual text. So this is like one of the main things that I want everybody to take home with them. And then this is another major thing too. Like if you got your phone, you're on Wi-Fi here because we don't have signal usually here. I would say like even if I'm talking, like I don't care. Download the Black's Law Dictionary, and there's a website that I'll give you where the guy has 6 different editions. The 4th and 5th editions are the ones that are like mostly used for legal stuff. But the whole point is that you need to look up words. Like one of my friends, she's like, I'm a proud U.S. citizen. I was like, no, you shouldn't be proud about that because that's basically saying I'm a proud slave. It's insane. So that's like another one of the oxymorons, you know, like I'm proud, like saying I'm a taxpayer, like, so that's saying you're a slave. So it's really about legal trickery. Like we need to know what we're talking about when we say these things. So when you see that, like, I guess you can just take a deep breath and decide if you want to combat them in a way or like try. And there's another thing that's very interesting about this from another lecture I listened to that was kind of like about another topic. But if you look up the etymology of the term argument, argument means to make clear. So it's one of those words where like anarchists, people hear it and they think it's like very like volatile and messed up, but it actually is like a good word. Like we need to have arguments. We need to make things clear. So there's that. So anyways, a U.S. citizen is technically a resident of the United States corporation, which is a fictional thing. It's not real. It's like saying I live in Monopoly land. Like it is garbage. I'm trying to not use curse words, so. But horseshit comes to mind. Sorry. I'm going to throw a little smattering of profanity in here. So, yeah, there's that. And then so U.S. citizen is a resident of a fictional land called the District of Columbia. And actually, one thing that's interesting too, constitutionally and whatnot, and basically as being a U.S. citizen, as the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments were ratified, which you could argue they weren't, but there's something called color of law. Has anybody heard of that? Yeah, it's like let's pretend, or like this isn't actually legal, but I'm going to pretend it's legal. So that's like really what I'm revealing. And one of the things is a whole kind of a mind trip. There's an F-bomb in there normally, another four-letter word inside trip. But another mind trip is that there's like they say this and that. I don't know. Anyways, hold on. I'm just kind of getting distracted by that, whatever that was. All right, so like saying that like the Constitution basically doesn't apply to you. And so the Constitution is something that would apply to us normally, but by saying you're a U.S. citizen, the Constitution doesn't apply to you. And you could have this and that you want to say about like the founding fathers and whatever like weird stuff was prevailing in the day. A long time ago, like some people might like poetry, but back then women would actually rub dog piss on their face to help with blemishes. So, I mean, things are weird. Like, you know, you just take things in stride and just acknowledge that, you know, the Greek culture like had some good things to offer, but they also did weird things with children. So, I mean, like, whatever we want to say, you can just judge and dismiss things if you want, or otherwise, like, take a more comprehensive look at it. And that's what we should all be doing with everything. So, anyways, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, a person is, like, if you look at the Black's Law Dictionary, a person is really not a person. It is all these, like, weird fabrications that don't mean person. Actually, if you want to know what it's like to be a minority and you're white or whatever, look up what a person is. You're a minority, because like everything is also these weird corporate entities. Like a corporation means like body, and it's like you don't have a body because you're like a corporation. You're not real. So that's kind of the trip there. Citizen, same kind of thing. It basically says you have dominion over you. I think I went over that so far, but just reiterating some of the stuff you can't reiterate enough. And my handwriting is terrible. All right, so being a resident alien is another version of citizenship. And look at that. There's a ship in it. We're going to talk about more maybe, but or we will. Not a maybe about it. But there's, like, your last name isn't what you should call it. You should call it your family name. That means you're like a humanoid creature, like flesh and blood and all that. When you say your last name, you're like saying you're a ship. So ship is in that. So that's where I was just kind of tangenting off of that. So what you want to be, so a resident alien is like basically someone who operates, so it's basically we all pretend, because when you sign your social security card as a parent, or like your parents did that to you, they said that you're in this let's pretend game. And that actually happens like 2 to 3 weeks after your birth. So technically, in a weird way, if you're operating in that, you have kind of 2 birth dates. And then if you have a vehicle and you're registering with the DMV, which you technically don't own the vehicle because you are paying them rent when you're paying them fees. And that's all the stuff about licensing. Licensing is something a slave does. Like, so when you say you're going to get a license for something like marriage, you're consenting to say that you're part of that system. So this is the whole thing that's like I'm saying, you need to look up a law dictionary. You need to be very vigilant about these things, because if you're not, then you're going to like continue to give consent to say that you are a slave and you're not a flesh and blood human. And so we're going to talk about like the way your names is in all caps in a little bit. So anyways, I just want to get the citizenship nonsense out of the way here. So if you are either a U.S. citizen, that sucks, slave of the U.S. corporation, pretending you live in D.C., which is all based in Puerto Rico too, with the IRS. And then you have the resident alien, which is like I'm a foreigner, but I'm doing business in the District of Columbia, so I'm going to be their little punk and pay them taxes and do this and that. But then what you really want to be, which is also the state national, is a non-resident alien. So that means that you don't live in this fictional nonsense and that you're not subject to their nonsense. So that's really what you are. State national is also a non-citizen alien. All right, so I talked about color of law. Let's see. Oh, I'm going to get to that stuff. I don't know what that says. It looks like it says Mark Twain, but with a Y. I don't know what that means. But anyways, Black's Law Dictionary, you guys need to get it. That's like the main thing. Take that from this. Look up every word. You can't assume like what a word means. Like, for instance, a forest is, and I knew this before I even learned about the state national stuff, because I trip out on etymology in general, so I've had the inclination, so all this wasn't foreign to me. Like, this guy that I check out, his name's Brandon Joe Williams, and here I'm going to drop a strategic profanity here, but this is literally what the guy's website is called onestupidfuck.com. The kids are talking, so It's like if you can't handle a little profanity, then you're not going to ever escape the matrix, and you're going to just be a weak little sheeple person. So, anyways, that's kind of his trip, which I like because I'm like a comedian. And I say things in really dark, weird ways. So you need to look up words. Don't assume what they mean. Otherwise, you're stuck in the U.S. citizenship, which is basically saying that you have no rights. All right, and I don't know what fourth best. Oh, the fourth edition, fifth edition, Black's Law Dictionary, get those. So jurisdiction, vessel name is versus a family name. So when you say that you have a last name, that's like saying I'm a boat. You know, instead of I'm on a mother effing boat, which was a Saturday Night Live skit. Yarnby, leave him alone. Anyways, all right, so your name you see on documents like on your license or birth certificate, which is like a license more or less. Like certificate of birth is like different. I don't know. So saying that you are like this fictional thing. So all caps means that you're working in like a weird like Roman system, which means you're a debtor, a slave, or you're not a human being. And so using that kind of system actually comes from Roman law where like a farmer would go away to like, you know, I don't know, do the Crusades or something. Just basically you're just not on the farm. And then you're still doing business and you're producing and you still like earn from capital or whatever. So this is like 2,000 years old of craziness like that we're talking about right here. This is nothing new. Oh, and I wanted to say too that like the term conspiracy theory, you guys probably heard this, but that was come up with in the 60s by the CIA to discredit people that basically think for themselves. So conspiracy theory, I don't know. Like some people would call this conspiracy theory, but it's not. And I'm gonna try and get. All right, I think I'm like a third of the way through this. I don't know where I'm at for time. So yeah, when you put you should put your name if you want to identify as a living human being. You want to put your name in lowercase. So you put your name, lowercase first name, and then you put a colon. And then you put your middle name, and then you put a dash, and then you put your last name. And that's like basically how you're supposed to write your name. And then if you sign any kind of document, so what we're going to get into, like really this is the overarching thing about it all, is that we're talking about trust law. So everything is a trust relationship. So like right now, I am your trustee, and by you participating and listening to me, you're a beneficiary. I'm trying to benefit you by like spending time doing this and stuff. So like if you're any interaction like boils down to that. So, and then what's happened is that by like participating in the nonsense economy is like one of the things that I describe this all as, where it makes the least amount of sense for you, but makes the most dollars and cents for these diabolical, demonic people. That you are basically flipping the trustee relationship. So like a cop is supposed to be, for instance, they're supposed to be your trustee, not the beneficiary. But when they're like, oh well, I'm going to cite you for this and that code. And you're going to like have to go to court. And when you get represented by a lawyer, you're saying that like I'm like incompetent and I'm retarded, like literally like the sense of the word. Like no one's canceling scientists where they're doing a study and be like, we found this chemical compound retards cell growth. Like nobody's like throwing a fit about that. Like we still use these words. So like I'm pretty sure we're in safe space for me to say retard, like how it's kind of supposed to be used, not in a mocking way. But, I mean, I'll do that too, but right now I'm not. So, anyway, so where was I going with this? So, yeah, it's all about jurisdiction. And so, like, you're subjecting yourself to them instead of saying that, like, you're the beneficiary. So in a police interaction, like I was saying, that, like, they're making you're exploited. Like, they're benefiting from you instead of them. You're supposed to benefit from them, like, allegedly protecting you. But it's like, what are you protecting? What are you serving in that? It's obviously like the empire, like nonsense, like New World Order, Illuminati, whatever you want to call these things. So like anyways, write your name. And so this is like the way you should be signing your name in all future interactions. And one thing that's a total like mind trip about this is that when you are dealing with like any kind of form that you have to sign for, you like write your name like I told you, like all lowercase with the hyphen and the dash, or excuse me, hyphen and a colon. Separate your middle and your family name, not last name. And you do that, and then but you also write before that, you write without prejudice. So what that does is it says I believe in my like rights as a human being, not as like this fictional horse crap. And if you like have me like sign something that operates like that, then it's kind of like a disclaimer. Saying that like if you're gonna try and say that I'm not a human being and you're gonna exploit me later, like I wrote without prejudice, so like you can't like override my rights because like I wrote that. So you write that, you write your name the way it's supposed to be written, like I said, going back to Roman law, if you are in debt, then your name is in all caps. But before, you're a human being. If you're a slave, your name is in all caps. So like that's like the basic thing. And then after that, you write if you are the trustee or the beneficiary. So say you like go to the bank and you're doing something and they want you signed. You say you're beneficiary. But if you like sign something and say like you're relinquishing property, for example, you say that you're like the trustee in that relationship. I mean, I don't know. It's a little tricky. I'm not like 100% on all this stuff. I'm still learning about it. The guy that I follow, like he like says like you need to really spend like 500 hours on this. And I just sent some of this to my bro. He's like, I don't have time for a 40-minute video. I'm like, dude, like you're paying a third of your crap to the government and like you're being their little punk. And like, so is it worth it to make that time? It sure as hell is if you are aware of like what this dynamic is. So anyways, learning to sign your signature and like reinforcing that. So you're basically affirming like you're not part of their nonsense. So like really, so the course that this guy does on his website is called a contract killer course. So like basically by flipping the trustee beneficiary relationship, everybody's being tricked into being like that slave thing. And so what you need to do is like kind of like an onion. You got to shed like these layers and be like, yo, I'm not like this crap anymore. Once you come up with it. Oh, and this was the thing that was the mind trip I was getting into a second ago, is that when you actually learn all this stuff, which like I'm telling you all this now, like there's actual statutory law in the U.S. code that says, and UCC is basically something that overrides like your constitutional rights as like a flesh and blood human being. By knowing this stuff and not like saying like, hell no, I don't want anything to do with that. Once you learn about it, you're actually guilty of a felony, which could get up to 3 years in jail and a financial penalty. So that's how weird this all is that actually it's illegal for you to participate in it, especially once you find out. So yeah. Look up this guy's website. It's just insane. And his thing's funny too. Like he makes fun of the whole thing. His like, I guess the subtext or whatever to his website description is like, escape the matrix or don't. I don't give a shit. he's like telling you how to do it. It's like, if you don't, it's like, he's not going to lose sleep over it. So, all right. So signature without prejudice, that gives you protection against them overriding your rights. This is all Roman, or you're a debtor slave person if it's all caps, 2,000 years old, bam, bam, bam. And what does this say? Oh, just one thing I want to like say about this too is like on the sense of like I'm vegan and I think that like all the stuff happening with like COVID, for example, and like forced vaccinations and medications is like the way we treat animals. And I also think it's like you are what you eat. And we had Dr. Will Tuttle came here and spoke as well. I don't know if anybody was here that was at, yeah. And so he like breaks this all down on like a really like crazy like historic level, studying herding people and controlling animals and like this whole like mentality of like the New World Order and this and that, and statutory stuff and controlling people. And so, yeah, I think it's like you are what you eat and this and that. And so like they're treating us all like cows because like cows, for example, or chickens, they live in like really insane conditions in factory farming. And then they're bound to get like all these weird diseases because it's like if we were all crammed into that casita and that was all we had to live in, all of us like for like 6 months at a time, like there's going to be crap everywhere and pee and like it's just going to be disgusting and horrific. And they're like, oh, we're going to give you antibiotics so you guys are okay. So then we can just kill you in 6 months. Like, it's just crazy. So, like, basically they're all killing us slowly and exploiting us and making money off of us. And that's, like, the medical system. Oh, and then this is something crazy. It's called Cult of the Medics. I'm going to do question and answer as soon as I, like, get through this. Is, like, about, like, the history of the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitallers and, like, how, like, the medical system was, like, created on an exploitation status. So, anyway, so what happens is if you don't identify with the U.S. citizen or the resident alien stuff and you're the non-resident alien state national, all this stuff doesn't apply to you. So that's like really what we're going for here. So yeah, the president of the country is technically a CEO, and like by you like participating in it, then you're like basically like you're like verifying that he like rules over you and stuff, and you're like property. And property, you can do whatever you want. Like if I had like a paper airplane, I want to crumple it up, I could do it. Like no one's gonna be like, that paper has rights. No, it's all just paper. Like actually, that's a pretty good one. I just came up with that one about paper nonsense. So anyways, if you get anything that says like paper crap and it says like your name in all caps, like you need to just be like, I don't identify as that. And so if you get something and you like you consent or you like allow it to fly and you don't like rebut it, and this is about affidavits, which we're going to talk about in the end, then you're basically verifying like their nonsense structure and stuff. I'm going to take a sip. All right. So yeah, it's a trust in Puerto Rico. You're all based on your birth certificate and your social security number, basically saying that your properties. Hi, Dingo. And then, are you getting cold? Go hang out by the fire, dude. So if you look at, and this is like the thing that's crazy about, so if you do your research from like every angle possible, if you look up the U.S. style manual, anybody that's done like journalism or like writing stuff, like if you have a literature degree or whatever, then like they give you like style manuals. And you guys are all familiar with it probably. You had to write like paragraphs and this and that or whatever. If you look at a U.S. style manual and it says like things in all caps, it describes it as an acronym, a corporation, or a trust. So like it is all written down. It's not, like I said, conspiracy theory is just something to discredit this. This is all conspiracy. Like, and everybody is being tricked into it. So the UCC, Universal Commercial Code, is like what applies to everybody. And then unless you say I don't, that doesn't apply to me. So yeah, all this stuff about identity politics. And this is another thing. I didn't even write this down, so I'm glad I just thought of this. If you don't identify as like your actual sex or gender, you're basically also exempting yourself from the system, because all rights that you would have by not being part of the system are based on being a woman or a man. So when you say that you're not those, then you're also shooting yourself in the foot, or a scalpel is removing something. It's just total craziness. So like basically your fake paper person is a Cesta KV trust, which comes from French contract, the farming thing that I was mentioning earlier. So your date of birth and your registration are like part of that. And so like you're basically saying you're subject to like the monopoly land nonsense, and you're like, it's like, has anybody seen the movie Big Daddy? All right, it's a while back. It's an Adam Sandler movie. He ends up like basically kind of adopting a kid is the whole thing. But he ends up with this little kid, and they're playing a game, and the kid's just making up rules and stuff. And he's like, what's going on? He's like, I win. Like, so no matter what happens, the kid's winning. So like that's what's happening. Like this is just complete nonsense. And by being part of the system, you lose and they win. So that was just a reference. I'll make a video and put a clip of that. I don't know. I need Ignacio to help me edit that though. So. Yeah, I don't like staring at screens. So yeah, let's see. Social Security number, Constitution, common law. I don't know. Oh, trustee beneficiary. We talked about that. It's a felony to participate. Once I told you all this. All right. So the thing that's crazy too is all right. So there's basically, I said jurisdiction. So by being part of the system, you're saying that they have jurisdiction over you. So there's 3 types of jurisdiction. So there's the law of the land, which is like the law of the people. Like, they say like when in Rome, which is actually another thing that ties in that I just kind of came up with saying. They say when in Rome, do this. There's a 2,000-year-old Roman system of craziness. And then everything kind of fell apart there in some way. You think like the Romans were nuts. Like they had lead pipes and they were all losing their mind and like not trusting each other. So that's actually like they were losing their mind. So yeah, when in Rome is like kind of like a phrase that does say like if you're here, like if you're on like Paul and Lauren's like spot, like you're here and you're just like, I'm gonna wear a mask or whatever. Like you guys should get vaccines. You're like, yo, you need to get the hell out of here. Like this is not the law of the land. Like you're just completely antithetical to the embodiment of all that is going on here. So law of the land, first jurisdiction, and this actually comes from the word law itself. So there's the law of the land. There's the law of the air. The law of the air is like God. Like, which is, it is whatever you want, but there is some kind of like universal harmony. There is some kind of thing going on in the cosmos. Like, I don't identify as like a Christian, for example. I feel like that bureaucracy and organized religion is totally hijacked. Has anybody seen the movie Stigmata? This is actually a fun tangent. It was a weird, like, a horror film or whatever, but it was actually about the conspiracy or whatever. Spoiler alert. I mean, we're not all watching movies. We're all like breathing and hanging out with each other, right? That's another thing about the term conspiracy. It means to breathe together. So that's a fun one. So the movie Stigmata is like there's somebody who's possessed with a demon or something. And so the preacher guy who's like in exorcist mode, like trying to deal with it and figure out what's going on. Like really, it's like the lesson from the movie came out to be that that Christ says, he's like, you look under a rock and you will find me there or whatever. Like basically like that you don't have to go to a church. Like the whole thing of the movie was like the church is bullshit. So that was kind of fun. I just like when I learned all this stuff, I thought about that movie and I'm like, I'm not into horror films. I watched that like when I was little and I have different tastes now. But anyway, so that's like kind of the idea. So law of the air, it's like, it permeates all. Like, so the law of God, whatever you want to like consider it, you don't have to be like part of organized religion to understand. So that's really what this all boils down to. And that's why you have people swear on Bibles and things like that. And now the thing that's the nonsense is maritime admiralty law, which is a law of water, or the rules of water more so. And so, like, we're in the let's pretend we're underwater game. So if you go to, like, any mountain, more or less, they have, like, these high water marks and stuff. And there's a dude named Jordan Maxwell. Has anybody heard of him? Yeah, he died, like, in the last year or something. But that guy was a G. I actually talked to him, and he, like, talked about keeping me as a mentee. And he, like, wanted me to come to L.A. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm chilling in Humboldt, dude. Like, I don't think I'd lose my mind in L.A. But he has a great video about that with this dude, Jason something. Another Jason. I don't identify as Jason. My last name's Robo, and usually I grew up military, so people call me Robo a lot. So there's a lot of Jasons. So, anyways, land of the air, land of the land, or law of the land, law of the air, law of the water. So LAW, that's what law comes from. They say. There's other weird stuff too that Maxwell will talk about, like Israel is Isis, Amun Ra, and El, which is like the Saturnalian cult, and then Amun Ra is Egyptian. And then ISIS. So that's like a hybridization of those terms. So it's kind of similar to that. So anyways, that's where law comes from. Allegedly. I don't know. Do your own research. This is really what this all comes down to. All right, so I think I'm 2/3 of the way through this. Because like if I explain this to you and you don't like actually internalize it and practice it and do your own research, you're just going to like keep falling into their traps. It's like, hey, there's like one mousetrap right there, but you got to look for like the spring and that thing that like snaps your neck and whatever. And you're like, oh, all right, that's that one. And they're like, no. Like you got to know what's going on, and otherwise you're going to be susceptible to all the traps that are set. So they're all different, but they have like their own hallmarks and stuff. So, all right, hold on, let me look at this. All right, so like I said, so basically like vaccine mandates and all this other stuff, statutory law where it says, so this is the thing about like common law or law of the land. Like if you want to do mushrooms or smoke crack even, like whatever the hell it is, like if you're not going to steal from someone or stab them in the neck or like whatever, like rape people or whatever crazy stuff, if you don't violate people's property or their person, then technically you're not doing any crime. So like that's why the thing about the U.S. citizen nonsense is you're like saying that I am going to participate in being subject to like all this like ridiculous nonviolent crime stuff. And then like the thing too is like that these elite like assholes, I'm going to say that one, is that they are like not operating on that kind of law too. And that's why you can't prosecute them for anything. It's like these people are all criminals. And it's like, yeah, but they're like exempt because they know about this stuff. All right. So we're getting there. I don't know what I'm doing for time once again. So.
I can't remember exactly when we started.
Okay.
But I think we're okay.
I don't have my phone. I'm in the moment. I'm just going to get through this. All right, so basically everything is trustee beneficiary relationship. So like if you're not subject to the system, then they say that you have to get these vaccine mandates, then you're like, nah, I don't have to because like I don't identify with your nonsense system. And so the same thing goes for court and people and letters. Like I said, if somebody sends you a letter and says this and that and your name's in all caps, you need to send them an affidavit or some kind of rebuttal, and you're like, this is like the part that's really crazy about this is you can discharge debts. So like your like fake person trust thing is like got a monetary value. So when the Great Depression happened and they like basically destroyed the country more so than before, like a lot of the ideas of it were like beautiful in a way, asides like the, you know, the evil that was done to like create it, like stealing land and genocide, fun stuff, right? But that's how they marketed it. All the ideas were good. And that's like all the things. That's what like, people that are psychos like seduce people, you know, like people that are psychopaths are really, really nice until like they screw you over.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, you're not that nice. So anyways, all the ideas were great. So if we actually hold to them, that's why I don't do isms personally. I'm like anti-ism because like anybody that's into an ism could be full of crap, you know, like a Catholic or whatever. Like, don't leave your kid with them. I don't know. Like that's the kind of thing. Well, I'm getting too deep into this. So yeah, licenses basically makes you a slave. So like, one of the things you gotta do to like kind of defy these systems is you register to vote. You're saying that you're a slave person that's gonna help vote for the CEO, which basically is voted for by the Electoral College, and then those are pre-selected people that they give for you to like think that you vote for. So anyways, we all agree on that, I'm sure. So that's the kind of thing that we don't want to be part of. So I went to they deferred me to the DMV at first when I called and asked about it with the voter registration. I'm like, how do I deregister to vote? And they were like, they sent me to the DMV, and I'm like, oh, well, we're all ships. So it makes sense, right? And then I went to the DMV, and they're like, well, we only register you to vote here. Like, we don't know how to like unregister you. And they were like totally confused and weird, and I spent a bunch of time there for no reason. And then after that was all said and done, I was like, I got referred to the actual election office. I'm like, well, that makes like the most sense I would have thought in the first place. So that's how you deregister is actually go them. So I went, I filled out a form, and like within 2 weeks, this will be all set. And I'm like, all right, cool. So don't be registered to vote. Technically, this is back to the Constitution thing, which is the thing that they trick you out of, is it says you have a right to vote. So if you want to vote, show up to a polling place, ask for a ballot, and then get a ballot. Like say, hey, I have a right to vote. I'm not registered to vote. And they just give you a ballot. So if you want to vote for local elections, this is probably the best thing to vote for. All right, same thing with the DMV. I think I said, like, so basically there's a master title on file. So the title that they give you is like monopoly money. It's not real. And then, so like, that's why you pay them fees to like keep your vehicle. And when you don't, what happens? You get pulled over and they'll tow your car and they keep it. That's because you don't own it. So when you like do this kind of stuff, and there's like basically like two, I don't know them off the top of my head right now, but like there's one thing in the Constitution that's right to travel. So that's half of the picture. But like I said, you got to check this guy's website. He has all the legal resources on there. And then he has the contract killer course, which is like maybe like 25, 30 hours. And that will like give you like a huge leg up on all the research you need to do to like reinforce it all. So he has one lecture that's just on like marriage licenses versus certificates. Alabama is the only state, for example, that has a marriage certificate instead of a license. Like other states, they'll have the option, but that one, they don't even do that. So it's kind of cool. Who would have thought Alabama's progressive? No, it's weird. So yeah, so there's, like I said, statutory law doesn't apply to you. So when you're in the DMV, you're saying that you're subject to that. Like officers can do this and that. And then so one of the ways I've heard to like counteract if you get harassed by a cop is like, all right, like I agree that you want to like search my vehicle, but I charge $1,000 an hour. So if you want to look in here, you know, you're consenting to that. So this is like, once again, they like try and impose something on you and then you rebut it. You have to. If you don't, then you're basically saying like, okay, and you're just being a slug. So Title 26 is the IRS code, not ratified. Same thing as 14th Amendment. So 26 CFR section 601.602 subsection A says that taxes is voluntary. And then, so if you are part of the system and you're paying taxes or anything, and this is one of the first things I did when I finished this guy's course, I filed this thing. It's called a Form 56 with the IRS. It's on the website. It's real, not conspiracy theory. You file this form, and it says, I no longer identify with the crap that I was like tricked into. So that's how I would recommend the first thing you do. And then there's another form called a W-8BEN. So if you're at some kind of business, I work under the table mainly, so I don't have to worry about this so much, but I might have a job opportunity where I'm going to be like, pay me in gold or silver. It actually says like we should all be paid in like these kind of legal tenders. It's actually gold and silver. So like all these checks and like dollar bills are all like nonsense. And that kind of gets back to the 1099A, which is another form that you can use, which says that you're pulling off of the trust. All right, so I was kind of like got into a tangent. Like I said, it's so complex and crazy, so you got to do your own research. But so when you like file like anything for like a loan, they make the money up like when you say you want to do it. So that money didn't exist. So they made the money up, and then on top of that, they say you have to pay them. So they made the money up out of the thin air, and then you have to pay them out of the other pool of money. And then there's a third way, furthermore, which I'm a little murky on explaining, where they actually like create money. So like there's 3 times the amount of money, and then you got fractional reserve banking, which is like they only have to have 10% of the money that they say they have. And then they can loan out that 90% of nonsense over and over, and they basically can take like $100 and make it into like thousands and thousands of dollars. It's just crazy. So if you have a job where you're like supposed to so-called pay taxes, file a W-8BEN, and it basically tells your employer, yo, I got this. Like, I don't have to pay taxes through you. Like, I'll figure it out. It's on me. And then they don't have to pay taxes either, so it's actually a win-win. So once they figure it out, it's weird. And then there was a guy that was interviewed by Brandon Williams. And then he like basically explained to his employer like what's going on, and they were like a little weird, but he was like killing him with kindness. So it's like really about being chill. And that's one of the things that's really weird about this dude. He just makes fun of it all. Like I said, he's like kind of dark sometimes, but in a way, like when he deals with the system, he's always like having fun with them. So like when he sends him like forms and things, he's like, these are just guys sitting in a desk. They're waiting for you to file these things. They're real. Like they just do the paperwork. They're doing their job. And as you want, you can like be cool with them and send them like, he sends them Polaroid pictures like dressed in like a pickle outfit and stuff. Because he's like, these guys are just sitting in a desk, like waiting there, like with a cucumber up their butt, and they're just like waiting to do their job. And it was just some weird thing he just started to say, and now it's like his brand. So if you want to buy all of his pickle gear, then go for it, I guess. My only beef is it's not like fair trade, sweatshop free, and organic, so whatever, you know. But anyways, that's me. Because I'm like super hardcore about this, so this all makes sense to me. So file your Form 56, that's IRS form you can find online, completely free. And then their WABN. Oh, and then when you file all these things, you use your certified mail. I'm like 7/8 of the way through this now, so I'm almost done. And I can do a couple questions. But file, anything you file, you need to send with certified mail because that makes it a legal document. So if you want to send somebody something that says, hey, screw you, like, file certified mail, it's going to be like, they got it, like, you know. So, and then, so that applies too. If you send it to like the CEO of a bank and you're like, this loan is made out of nonsense money. Same thing like with the cops thing. Like, hey, I agree about your nonsense technically, but you need to rebut these certain points. And if you don't respond to each of them in an affidavit, then basically you're saying like, I'm not going to pay you. And if they don't like find a way, which basically the trickery is here, is when you file those points to them, what happens is if they like actually try and respond to those, they're going to admit to fraud. So it's a crazy catch-22 you put them in, and then you win because they're not going to respond to it. And then you say like 2 weeks, I think, is the minimum you could give them, which is kind of a dick move. Like I said, he's like all about being cool with them. So, and he sends a Polaroid with his like cucumber outfit, and he's like, hey man, I know it sucks working in a cubicle. Take my silly picture and try and hit on that girl as your coworker you want to hook up with or whatever. Like, he's just goofy. Like, he just has fun with it. And then he finds like random chicks like take the pictures for him. They're like, what? I don't know. It's funny. All right, and then so the next thing you want to do besides the Form 56, and then if you pay taxes, like I don't, but if you do, and you don't want to anymore. So there's one guy, and he like basically doubled his income because him and his wife are like poor teachers up in Oregon, and they're saving $2,000 a month by not being part of the system anymore. And so that's what they explain. Like, he talked to the IRS, and he's like, hey, can you explain to them? And they're like, I don't even know what this is. He's like, well, can you look at it? Can you answer some questions? Can you call them? And then like within 2 hours, he got a call from his employer saying that he doesn't have to pay taxes anymore. He's like, all right, cool. So like just be chill with it. So the next thing you want to do is you want to get a passport. So like I don't have enough time to explain it. I still a little murky on some of this stuff too. Is that you get out of the DMV system. So like the registration on my motorcycle and my car or truck are expiring right now, and my Subaru is also long expired. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. Like, they sent me something because I had an old ticket when my license renewed, which is totally crap. Like I paid hundreds of dollars because my license, I filed to renew it. And I was waiting for it in the mail, and it never came. The paper won't expire. I'm like, yo, what the hell? And they're like, oh, well, you got an old ticket in Oregon from like 2015 or something. It was even older than that. And it was like, now your license won't renew. And I'm like, well, why didn't you just tell me in the first damn place when you said everything was good to go? So they like set a trap. So like I could have gotten pulled over and just totally like abducted and like my vehicle stolen, like that kind of thing could have happened. So anyway, so what you want is a passport because you have a right to travel. So this is like back to the Constitution thing. You have a right to vote. Show up at a polling place. If you want to vote for like the local slime ball or against them, then that's what you do. So you get a passport, you file, and then the main thing you do. So there is, if you look at, and I could pass my passport card around if you guys want to look at it, or we could look at it after. Nobody steal my shit. Somebody will make sure nobody takes it. So you can get a passport book, but you could also get a passport card. And so the passport card is like a handier version than having that big book. And so what you do, does anybody want to grab this for me and start passing around? So if you look like at the top in the middle, right underneath where it says passport card, under passport, it says 3 stars. So what you do is you get like this kind of stuff done, and then your passport will have 4 stars or 5 stars, and that automatically exempts you from statutory law. 5 stars is the best one. And that one, though, you need a long form birth certificate. Once again, it's kind of like how like you don't own your car and they give you that monopoly money like certificate. The same thing with a birth certificate. Like if you have a regular birth certificate, it's like not really like a good legal document. But if you want to escape the matrix, then you turn in your passport form with this, and then this crazy statement that basically cites all this case law that says like U.S. citizen is nonsense. I don't identify as that. And so some people, and I don't know the name right now off the top of my head of the guy. Actually, Vanessa, I don't know if you can grab my phone real quick. I think it's in the car. Hold on, let me check my pocket. No, never mind. I still have it. All right, cool. I stopped you from getting up. So yeah, you file the passport form, and the main thing you can do to get a 4-star passport right off the bat. And the guy said if you do the expedited thing and whatever, he got his in like 12 days. So it normally costs like $160, but it would cost like $300 if you do the expedited, like overnight mail, and like if you were like super psychotic about getting this thing in your pocket as soon as possible. So you use this, and if you get pulled over, you're like, hey, I have a right to travel. Like, I don't have a license. And then they're going to, like, maybe short circuit. And then you tell them, like, a couple things. And then they're going to, like, radio their chief or whatever and be like, hey, this guy's got this. And they're like, yeah, like, we don't want to deal with that. Like, whatever, just let him go. So that's what you want this thing. And then so you're not going to be subject to the statutory law stuff. So that's the easiest thing you can do is just get the passport form, file for a new passport, however fast you want it is up to you. But just when it says who are your parents and are they U.S. citizens, you put no. Put no. And that's all you got to do. And then you'll get a 4-star passport. And then, I mean, there's also like a little bit of stuff where it's like you write your name in lowercase. When you put your zip code in, you put it in the brackets. They're like the parentheses, but they're like a half square looking thing. You do that, and then that also exempts you. Because it's like when you use a regular zip code, you're saying you identify as, this is another thing I didn't get to, the state of California. It's like uppercase letter. City of, county of. Those are all abstractions. They're under the umbrella of the fictional District of Columbia craziness. So that's like just another can of worms there about like writing your address properly, not just signing documents. So like if you get to write, and it is one of the things that like on that form, for example, it'll have like the 2 spaces where you write California or the acronyms. Well, the acronyms, like I said in the style manual, they say that you are part of a corporation or an acronym, and that's like trademarked and all this stuff. So what you want to do is you write California, and like, because we have like the longest name besides like Washington, Massachusetts, or like some of the longer ones, you write that shit in diagonal, like as small as font as you can. You write California out. You do not write CA. Because if you do that, you're consenting to the nonsense construct. So like I said, there's all these little nuances and things like that. So you file that, get your long form birth certificate. He says you want to have like a dozen or two of these like things like in your pocket. And he said that when he filed his, they send his original birth certificate back to him. So I did that. You gotta be really, it's weird. There's like a website that like does it. I don't know if does anybody go camping and deal with like Reserve California, Reserve, whatever, you know what I'm talking about? It's like they just outsource this stuff. It's like, dude, we're in California, like Silicon Valley. You can't find somebody with a computer that knows how to like make a website for like reserving a campsite. You have to like give this away to like some corporate butt plug. Like, I don't know, it's crazy. So anyways, there's a version of that for like government documents, and I forget what the name of it is right now off the top of my head, but basically like it's hard. So the best thing is to do is just show up. If you were born in California, you show up at an office and you say, hey, I want this, and you get it like the same day. Well, I think they have to dig it out, so it might take a second, but you pay cash, and that's the cheapest way to get them because they do add up if you get a bunch of them. So anyways, you send that in, you send it with that affidavit that says a U.S. citizen is a slave idiot and I'm not a slave idiot, and that's just, you know, paraphrasing here. And then there's a guy who's a website he recommends. It's like $150 to get this, but it's like you're paying for your freedom, so it's like $150 is worth it. People spend that much at a bar sometimes at a night. And then you send that in with your birth certificate, or just do the like my parents aren't U.S. citizens, fill your name out like a human being, not a slave person in all caps, and then you just wait. And then so within like I got mine, I didn't even do the expedited last time I think, and I got mine like within a month. So you get that, and then that's like your supreme legal document. It says I am not part of the nonsense construct. And then so yeah, then that's it. You use affidavits to counter things. So let me just tell you a little bit about the 1099A real quick. So the 1099A is the last thing I think I didn't fully explain. Is that is your what you call like your account, the Sesta KV trust thing. It's like the Roman law. Well, it came from French like farming law too. So it says there's an account with your valued or whatever on. So you can actually use their thing, and then so the contract killer course once again is to remove yourself from all these contracts. And then if you want anything to do with these, like so say you need to rent a car, you might need a driver's license to do that. So like you can re-enter those contracts, but you sign the without prejudice. You sign your name and like lowercase letters and all that stuff. Then you do that, and then you're like reinforcing your sovereignty. Until you do that, like you're just like basically subjects, and you're not sovereign. So 1099A, you can file a 1099A and say like, hey, like once again, like this money is all nonsense. How did you get this money? Is it real? Tell me all about that. And then otherwise, like I'm paying off my account with my 1099A that's based on like the human value that I have from the Great Depression. Kind of craziness. So like when they made this is one thing that's like interesting history. When they made the tax system, they also made the nonprofit, so-called philanthropy and stuff. So Carnegie and Rockefeller and all these elite, like scumbag, evil people that hoarded wealth and like ran over people's lives. They hoarded all their money and they threw it in those, and they said that they were philanthropists, but they are still fulfilling agendas. So there's a guy, Norman Dodd, who is director of what was the Un-American Services Committee, and then that turned into, they twisted it. This is the thing about, like, if you don't know what's going on, you don't know your history, they'll twist things and they'll turn them against you, like some weird, like Aikido or some kind of like martial art, judo, and they just flip it on your head and they snap your arm and you're screwed, and then they beat you with it. But yeah, so that's like what they've done. So like you have to like basically just know about these systems. So yeah, Norman Dodd, he basically broke down how they are. They were studying like the nonprofit system and like where they came from, and they like literally were studying how to create like control people's minds and recreate history, and they determined war is the best way to do it. And the person that was investigating that under his leadership was like someone that didn't think they were up to no good, and then she was like totally mind blown about what they were talking about, the Ford Foundation, for example. And some of y'all might know that Ford Foundation and Standard Oil, they were like basically supporting the Nazis and giving them the fuel so their rockets could hit like Britain and stuff. Like, I don't know, it's totally crazy. And we were almost part of Germany, allies. There was Smedley Butler. Does anybody know about Smedley Butler? Huh? So yeah, he was a Marine who won a Congressional Medal of Honor twice. Only person to ever do that, and he snitched on the elite because they wanted him to be a super secretary and absorb the powers of the president, which is basically what's happened through the bureaucracy and stuff. No. So anyways, the whole point is your 1099-A, that I was getting to the last thing, your 1099-A is an account that your value is based on, and you can use that. You can use that to basically pay off debts. So if you bought a car or whatever, like, and you know how to do this stuff and you're savvy with it, then you can start filing these things. And then there's a whole nother layer, which is using liens, which is anybody, like they say that you owe money and you don't own something anymore unless you pay the debt. That's like really gnarly and kind of like heavy duty. Like I could do a whole talk about that, and those things can backfire on you. But all this stuff is you reaffirm your rights. You tell them, like, I'm not a U.S. citizen slave person. I'm not a resident alien in your fictional thing that's based in Puerto Rico and D.C., and another fun fact I forgot to mention earlier was that D.C. originally in the Constitution was a 10-mile square radius, like diameter, and they were in charge of like the post office, and that was like all that D.C. was in charge of, and it's all gotten out of control. So, anyways, check out Brandon Williams' website, onestupidfuck.com. Forgive me, but that's what he calls it. And anyways, I'm Jason Robo. I don't know if you have one quick question. I did? All right, sweet. All right, so there we go. So anyways, thanks. I'm going to come back and make jokes about like other things eventually. Thank you, guys.
Good job, Jason.
Assert your freedom. Don't be a paper slave. This is flax paper. It's not even trees involved.
Nice.
That's how big of a hippie I am.
Black paper. No trees were killed in the print.
Yeah, Jason got one of those phones from Ramiro at the Greater Reset. It's, what does he call it? An Airphone? No. Jason?
What's that phone called?
What's the phone called you got now?
An above phone.
Above phone.
That's another thing where you're
Yes.
like, I don't want you to like peek
Yeah.
life and track me.
Yeah, so he's definitely a hippie.
If I had the money, I would have gone.